a minute or two while everybody is filing in. Brandon, do you mind confirming that my audio is okay?
I can hear you fine, Sierra. Good morning.
Great. Thank you.
Brendan, would you speak again? I think there's a slight echo.
Thanks. Okay, I'll work on that.
They want to check whether oh the guy was headed.
All right. Well, good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Sierra Petrosky, and I'm on the digital solutions team at Village Reach, and I'll be kind of your host/moderator today. To get started with a couple housekeeping things, just a heads up that we are recording this webinar. I'll go ahead and send it out later on today as a link for any of you that want to go back and rewatch anything, or maybe send it out to some colleagues that weren't able to make it. I have you automatically muted, so please try to stay that way throughout the webinar. If you have any questions that pop up, just go ahead and type them in the chat, and we'll have kind of a Q&A session at the end. There's a couple of people that keep popping off of mute, if you don't mind kind of trying to keep it on there. All right, here's our agenda for today. So we're going to walk you through what the problem was, how PCMT came about, and the need that it is meant to fill. We'll walk you through a software demo of version 1 of PCMT. We'll have a case study from GFP Van. We'll talk a little bit about next steps, how you can learn more and get involved or stay involved. And then we'll have a quick Q&A session at the end. So I will hand it over to Brandon from here.
Yeah, welcome everybody. It's great to have you all with us and eager to learn about this product catalog management tool. So my name is Brandon Bowersox-Johnson. I work at Village Reach and have been part of the digital solutions team at Village Reach working on this. And I'm just going to introduce a bit about what's the problem that this PCMT tool is trying to solve. So this will be a short introduction, and then we'll have a software demo, as you saw on the agenda, and then a case study. And throughout this, feel free to put questions into the chat box. We'll save up questions until the end, but feel free anywhere along the way here to start adding in questions. And we'll really make sure we have time to dive into your questions and talk about PCMT and how it applies to your work as we go today. So with that, I'm going to dive right into the problem that this product catalog tool is trying to solve. So what's the problem? Well, many of you who work in global health or see health systems around the world probably know this problem. that a product, even one single product or medicine, it could be a vaccine, could be a malaria pill, that product is identified differently across the whole health system. And that, from the time it's ordered to shipped to delivered to going to a warehouse, to going to a district, to going to a community health worker or a facility, it has different ID numbers and different names along the way. And that means it's very inefficient and error prone and very manual, a lot of manual work to try to track, how much of the medicine is consumed or used or wasted or shipped or ultimately reaches patients. It makes it very hard for all the different systems along the way to be interoperable and to have visibility of the supply chain and where are the medicines and how to get the medicines most where they're needed. So to be a little more specific about the problem, in national health systems, you may be familiar with many of these tools. Serving the patient and the health worker, there may be paper reports and ledgers. There may be an LMIS system or a central medical store ERP system. On the right-hand side, many more systems, software tools, and processes that are part of health systems these days, shared health records, or regulatory databases, or insurance claims. And in all of these systems, these green identifiers, the numbers may be different. The way each system tracks each medicine may use a totally different identifier. There's no consistent product identification. So it makes it very hard to put together a picture of where medicines go and how they're used and be more efficient in getting medicines to patients. So supply chains are just less efficient at delivering medicines where they're needed. And the problem magnifies at a global level where every country might have different ID numbers and identifiers in its supply chain, and global donors or global suppliers and manufacturers are also using different ID numbers, and it makes it very hard to piece together the entire picture of what is demand, where should products be ordered and shipped and supplied. There are a couple acronyms we're going to use that I wanted to mention today. One of them is OpenHIE. This, hopefully people have heard of OpenHIE, and if you haven't, I encourage you to check it out. And they have an annual conference coming up this October. It is a global community of practice around how interoperability works in health, supporting their phrase here, country-driven, large-scale health information sharing architectures. And so the OpenHIE community talks a lot about how things interoperate. Another important standard you'll hear today is GS1, a global standard for how products are identified, whether it's scanning barcodes or the precise tracking of medicines on pallets, in cases, in items from the factory. GS1 is the standard that has been adopted by UNICEF, by USAID. It's one of the global standards for how medicines are identified. And right now, those GS1 identifiers aren't used through a lot of health supply chains, but part of the PCMT solution is to allow these identifiers to be used. And so the solution with PCMT is to establish catalogs, to establish product catalogs that actually have GS1 identifiers, but also all the mappings to local identifiers. Sort of this purple line would be like a thread connecting all these different identifiers in the diagram we saw. The whole way from the manufacturer, the jar of medicine or the case or the pallet down to the patient where it's used, all the different identifiers along the way could be mapped. So the idea is you create a product catalog with a tool like PCMT that we'll see. You put in high quality master data, you're reviewing and enriching your catalog data continually, and you're using that catalog data across your health system. And so that can help streamline supply chain operations, help medicines reach patients when and where needed, and help address issues of quality medicines or falsified or substandard products. And we believe that's a key component in an e-health architecture like OpenHIE, having one mastered list, one master product catalog that can serve the whole health system. So PCMT is an open source software product that does just that. It helps solve this challenge. PCMT, as you'll see in a moment in the demo, helps to source and organize and enrich product catalogs, helps you import and export them, helps with approval workflows so that every change is tracked and fits your process, helps export data to other parts of the health system, and ultimately support interoperability and support visibility the whole way across the supply chain. So PCMT is also based on an existing open source tool called Akeneo. And in part of the demo, you'll see the Akeneo tool and also the PCMT features that we added to it. And Akeneo is a leading PIM tool. PIM stands for Product Information Management. It makes it really, really user-friendly to import and export product data and make edits and organize and classify and translate and ensure all the data is complete. So we use the Akeneo Community Edition and add more functionality to that tool for global health supply chains. So without any further ado, that's a basic background to what is the problem. I hope that was a familiar problem that many of you have seen. Supply chains, different identifiers from DHIS2 to LMIS to ERP to UHC, many systems all using different identifiers for the same medicine. And so now my colleague Josh Zamor will give us a bit of a demo so you can see what does this tool PCMT based on Akeneo actually look like, how does it work? And then after that, we'll talk about a case study of how it's being used by the Global Family Planning Van. So thanks. As you have questions again, please add them into the chat. And we will, after the demo and the case study, dive into your questions and talk about how PCMT could support you. Thanks. And Josh, take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. We're going to be watching a quick recorded demo. And if I could share my screen. All right. So hopefully you can now see the video on your screen. Oops. Sorry, I should have clicked one more button here. There we go. Okay. All right, now we should be set up. So thank you. Now let's watch the video here and hopefully the audio works. And here we go. Hello, my name is Josh Zamor with Village Reach, and I'm a software architect for PCMT. Today, I'll be showing you a pre-release of PCMT version 1 as of January 2020. Now, PCMT is an extension of the open source Akeneo software, and so you'll see things like Akeneo here on our login screen. With that, let's get started. Okay, a quick note. You might notice this yellow caution tape background behind our menu on the left. Not to worry about this. This is still pre-release software, so we put a yellow caution tape here. It'll be gone once you actually are using the release software. PCMT is all about managing products and putting those products into our catalog. Now, if we go look at our products really quickly, we'll see that we have 32 products that are in here. Now, these 32 products are all reproductive health products, and they're for the Global Family Planning Van. But that's not all that we have in here. If we go back to our catalog volume dashboard, we'll see that we actually have closer to 1,200 products or 1,200 SKUs that are in the system for those original 32 products. Now, that's a lot of variability in our products. And the way that we manage all of this variability in our system is that we're going to categorize our products into different categories, and we can put them into different families. Let's go look at some of the categories. Okay, so let's bring up our category search here. And now once I do this, I just clicked on the category for Global Family Planning Van, and I have a lot of different categories that are in here for the Global Family Planning Van. But that's not all that I have. I of course can have other category systems, such as ATC or GPC, or since I have 1,200 products, maybe I'm interested in product sourcing. So if I were to click on product sourcing, I now have a lot of different suppliers and a lot of different manufacturers, and I could go through here and click on one of these manufacturers and find the products that are supplied from that manufacturer. So if I click on Cycle Technologies, I can come up with color-coded plastic beads. This is one product out of our 1,200 products, and it's the only one that's categorized in our product sourcing from a manufacturer called Cycle Technologies. So let's go to that. Now I'm looking at all of the different attributes that define what color-coded plastic beads are within my catalog of 1,200 different products or different SKUs. And if I scroll through here, I can see that I have a lot of different attributes that define what this is, and these things are grouped into different attribute groupings. And I have a number of these in here. I'm going to focus on one of these attribute groupings called product coding. And if I look at this, what I'm doing here is I'm mapping the unique ID of color-coded plastic beads in my PCMT system to unique IDs in other systems. So if I have an HMIS system that has the ID 321, I can map it here. If I have an LMIS system that is the reverse of the HMIS system, it's 123, I can map that here. And of course my supplier is going to have their own complex and unique ID, and I can put that here as well. And I can put as many different systems as I need in here and map this product to it. And of course I can have as many different attribute groups as well as attributes that go in those groups as I want. Now everything that we're looking at here is all in English, and of course not everyone is going to speak English, and so it's as simple as setting up a locale and then switching to that locale. Now I haven't set up everything here for this demo, but if I switch this over to French, I'm going to notice that my LMIS code changed from LMIS code to this in French, and that my description changed to French. And if I wanted this value to also change by my locale, maybe that doesn't make so much sense for the system coding, but if I were to switch back and look at my product description, then I could set that up as well, and I could have a specific value for this attribute for product description that's in French, and I could type that in here. No, that's great. I'm going to switch back to English because I can't speak French. That defines our products through attributes, but that's not the only thing that defines products. As we were seeing before, we put these products into different categories. So here's my different categories. And all of these things are configurable. Of course, we were looking before at the Global Family Planning Van. Here's how we categorize that into that system. We also looked at how it was in product sourcing. Here it is as where it comes from a supplier, and from a manufacturer, here it is as well. We can put all of these different things in here. We could have GPC, ATC, we can have as many different systems as we want across the top, and then as we go into these, we can define what these different layers are or levels are as needed. All of this stuff is configurable. So we have categorization. We can categorize our products as many different ways as we want. But that's not all that we can do. We can also add associations. So let's say we have this product, color-coded plastic beads, and we want to define a substitution for this product. So I'm going to make a draft of this product and show how in that draft I can make a substitution for this product that I can then share out to others. So let's click Edit as a Draft, go back to my associations here, and I'm making an association to substitutions. Now I could have other types of associations. I could make a kit out of this product, for example, and I can have as many as these as I want, but let's just keep it to substitutions. I'll click Add Associations. We'll just associate it to this product, say Confirm, and now in the draft that I am working on, I've made this small change. I've added an association for a substitution. So I'm going to save this draft. Okay, great. So I've now saved a draft of that change. And if I look back at my product, I'm going to notice that in associations, there's no product here. There's no association or substitution that's listed here, the change that I just made. It's not here. And like I was saying, what we just did is we made a draft. And the way that we find and work through approving drafts or rejecting drafts is we go back to our activity, we can go into drafts, and here we see that we've created this new draft here. I can click and edit and see what's changed in here. Here's my association to that product that I made. And I can go through, make other changes, etc. But when I'm ready to go and approve this or reject it, I can click on Approve or Reject. And as soon as I click Approve and approve that draft, Now that change has actually taken effect in my product. And if I go back here, I'm going to see that my product has that association or substitution that's been made. So now we've seen how products can be defined through a very configurable set of attributes, and we've also seen how we can categorize these products into any sort of categorization systems that we would like, and we've even seen how we can create associations such as substitutions or even kits out to other products. And we've seen a very basic workflow where changes to a product first have to go through a review and approval process that can fit into your data governance structure, so that changes to a product don't immediately affect stakeholders before they've been properly reviewed and approved. Now I'd like to transition into thinking about how we get product data into and out of the system. And I'd like to just briefly mention that we have a very feature-rich set of imports and exports if you want to get data into and out of the system through traditional CSVs or Excel files. And we also have a full RESTful API for other IT systems to connect to PCMT and do the same thing, get product data into and out of the system. And it's as simple as going to System, clicking on API connections, and creating a new connection. So if I wanted to create a connection here, let's say I wanted to create a connection to the GDSN, I click Save, and now I have my credentials for that connection. I could create another one here. Let's say it was OpenLMIS. And I could create that connection as well. And I can just keep creating as many connections here as I need and as I go. Something that we plan to be working on is expanding the Fire spec so that we can get more product data in Fire, if you know what HL7 Fire is. And the way that you would access or grant access to that Fire API in PCMT once it's built is, again, through this interface, and you could be able to say a Fire connection and save that and get the credentials for that. Now, as we've mentioned before, PCMT is built to be configurable, and everything that we've been looking at is something that we can change through the settings. So if we go to settings, we can see all of these different things that we can configure in the system. And if we start with attributes, we see already we've got a lot of attributes that are defined in here, over 300. And if we want to create a new one, it's as simple as going to create a new attribute, and then we get a place to start from. So we could create numbers, we could create dates, or text areas, or reference data, etc. And we could just add a new attribute to our system. We can then go ahead and put that attribute in different groups, and we can create a new group if we want to. That's simple. If we have a lot of different categories, we were mentioning this earlier, we could go through and change the categorization systems that are in here at will. We can also do the same thing for product families. Now, we've been looking at reproductive health products so far, but if we wanted to put products in here for malaria, or perhaps products for vaccines, we could go and create these families, and then those product families are going to have very different attribute structures, of course, than reproductive health products would have. And we can set all of these things up. Of course, we were also looking at association types. I mentioned substitutions and kits. We can create those or edit those as we need. And we also can do the same thing for currencies, locales, and we really didn't talk about channels, but we could do channels as well. So everything in the system is designed to be configurable without a developer being present and changing the system and going through any sort of release process. You can do it, a system administrator can do it, and you can customize this system for your context at will so that it makes sense and you can get a handle on your products. So that's going to be our demo today. Again, my name is Josh Seymour with Village Reach, showing you PCMT pre-release for version 1 here in January of 2020, and I want to say thank you. All right, that was our demo video, and now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Stu, and he's going to walk us through a case study. So I'm going to pause sharing and then transfer it over.
Thank you, Josh. Let me share my screen. Okay. And can people,
Yep,
oops,
we
oops.
see your screen, Stu.
All right, let me swap my screen around here.
Here come the slides.
There we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Stu Strummel. I'm with Lightwell LLC. I'm an independent consultant service, and I advise and work with RHSC and the Global Family Planning Van. We'll be speaking a little bit about our experiences here with PCMT and where we're at. And I think it's important to throw more acronyms out to everybody and understand what Global Family Planning Van is, so you have some context about it. One of the first things I want to touch on is that it's not just about master data. Master data leads all of our work that we're doing within the van. However, it is opening up opportunities and innovations across so many different places. It creates opportunity that is a force multiplier in whatever we do. That's such a key point, because it's easy to get lost in both the technology issues that are at hand and the product master at hand. But when we can align across the things, all of a sudden new opportunities start to become out. Now, first, since I know there are quite a few people on the call that may not know about RHSC, or the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition, just to give you a slight context of it. It's a coalition that is spanning across both global procurers, manufacturers, country governments, and research institutes. And it's a clearinghouse to help understand how do we bring commodities to where they're most needed, and what are some of the challenges at play. As a coalition, it's moving across multiple different organizations and multiple different supply chains. And we were seeing many of the same problems that countries are seeing in their own experiences. And that is, how do we integrate between different applications that are different places in their life cycle, and using radically different ways of identifying a product, and even worse, radically different ways of identifying a product's unit of measure. So when we say, hey, we need 50,000 units of X, what does that mean? Is it 50,000 cases? Is it 50,000 eaches? Is it 50,000 vials? That has huge implications when trying to figure out cost and impact. And the second one that we kept running up against was how much effort it takes to align and work across this, and it happening manually over and over and over, and how many different spreadsheets people were trying to reconcile and move back and forth. This was a resource suck for us and not being very effective. So within this, we created the Global Family Planning Van. And this is a commercial control tower. And it helps to create visibility and opens up opportunity for collaborative planning. That, for us, we look at a supply chain as this cycling back and forth between what is an order to what is a shipment, to it being received, to being distributed in the country, to point of care, to the planning, to the recreation of an order. This whole life cycle of these things moving back and forth across different systems. But it's important to note that it's not just one supply chain. Nobody deals with a single supply chain anymore, it seems. We deal with multiple supply chains, that they fold themselves across everybody's different organizations. And how do we create that alignment across each one? This is a core challenge for us. Now, if governance is hard, data governance is really hard. And it's because it's not one organization. Not one version of the truth truly exists, because everyone has their own perspectives. We spend a lot of our energy on this. In our first year and a half, we did everything manually. And you can do all of this stuff manually. You can do it on documents, you can do it on spreadsheets, and you can do it in a rigorous meeting schedule. And that's exactly what we've done. But we're ready to start moving past that stage and using tools. And this is where PCMT came in for us. We've been looking at this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on harmonizing product and trade items, so I'm going to skip over this. We looked at PCMT and this opportunity to move past spreadsheets and creating an opportunity to pull in data, not just from our global procurers, but also from our GDSN, GS1 partners. This is a strong movement that's going forward. We think it's going to have a lot of opportunity for everybody in the space. But it's also important to note that GS1 and the GDSN is a journey, and that will take a lot of time for it to have full saturation in the markets. So we know that we have to be able to work with and leverage GDSN data, but we also need to be able to work with data that's not always going to be sourced directly from the manufacturer. And we want to be able to work with both. We want the best of both worlds and to bring those in. So within PCMT, we've been partnering on this in version 1 and look forward to version 2 with being able to create even more easy buttons to allow for that ingestion of data and alignment of data even more so. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit, I'm sure. One of the key things I want to stress as we close down for our portion here is that why we need to do product master data and alignment of product master data is that it opens up so many opportunities, and every organization that is engaging with systems, they're using a different way of identifying it, and then they're paying a tax, an organizational tax, in the amount of effort that they're working to maintain it. And it's not clearly understood how much energy we're all expending on these issues. By creating this centralized view and allowing us to flex around it, we're creating an incredible opportunity. PCMT isn't the only tool out there. There are many other product information manager tools that are available to you, but we're super excited to be partnering with Village Reach and the PCMT team on helping these capabilities flesh out and making it available to others as a public good. That's my portion, so I'm going to pass this back over to Sierra and Brandon.
Okay, great. I have just a couple more pieces of information about PCMT, and then we'll get into questions. If you have questions about Josh's demo or Stu's case study here about the GFP van, please continue to add questions to the chat. A few good ones are already there. I just have 2 more slides here about how you can kind of learn more about PCMT or get involved after today's webinar, and then we will dive into your questions and discussion. So where to learn more and how to get involved. A brief overview of kind of the timeline. We are just, as Josh said, finishing version 1 of PCMT, which is a global set of requirements for global organizations like the GFP van to be able to use PCMT. And this year, in 2020, we're starting then a version 2 package of work around national requirements so that national product catalogs in-country supply chains could use and benefit from PCMT. It's an exciting time, and we are looking for collaborators, people who are country stakeholders interested in using PCMT or establishing a national product catalog or helping GS1 be used in your country supply chains, and also looking for global procurers and donors outside of family planning who may want to use the tool and get involved to basically say, hey, in this coming version of the tool, here are the other things it could do to support me and my needs. So please reach out to us by email here at this address, pcmt@villagereach.org, if you might be interested in collaborating. And I'll put this address up again later. Just to give a highlight of who's been involved and to thank our donors. So Village Reach has been leading the software development so far on version 1 and in the coming work on version 2. Digital Square has been a key donor and also responsible for a co-creation workshop. The Global FP Van has kind of been the first user and helping to be the product owner and provide requirements. USAID is the funder for version 1, and thanks to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we have funding to continue working on version 2 this year to support national product catalog needs. So here are the key places to find information or get involved. There's online demos and videos and user documentation on the wiki, which is at productcatalog.io. The developer source code, if you want to dive straight in there, is on GitLab at this URL on the screen, or contact us about getting involved or collaborating in version 2, collaborating on PCMT and on GS1 adoption. That email address is the way to reach us. So with that, I want to dive into your questions, and feel free to continue adding them into the chat. I'm going to, the first one I think is for Josh, and the second one will be for Stu. So I'm going to call on you each and have you answer some of these questions. So I'm going to pop open my chat box. The first question is, I think, a good one for Josh. Josh, can you explain a little more, what are the primary identifiers for products between GS1 and a country's unique identifiers? Like how do you, what's kind of the primary key or the primary identification to map that all together? And maybe you can explain how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So just briefly, we saw a lot of how flexible the tool is, but we certainly are going to be recommending best practices for how you set up the tool to map to different systems. The primary identifier is really thinking about that product in your catalog. And so it has a primary identifier within that catalog, and you can change what that primary identifier is. But then after that, the question is, well, it has all these other identifiers as well, including a GS1 GTIN, global trade item identifier as well. And so you would then, in those attributes that we saw in the demo, you could then map specific products or specific variants of products. And we didn't dive too much into that variant structure, but that's kind of how we went from 32 products to 1,200 products. We saw that early on. That would be how you would map in the attributes to say, well, this product that's in my catalog, when I'm thinking about it from a GS1 perspective, it has this GTIN that's mapped in there. And then we also saw some of the other mappings to other identifiers. So that would be my short answer. And like I said, we're certainly going to be looking to provide some best practices for how you structure your catalog. Hopefully that helps.
Actually, Josh, this is Stu here. I'd like to extend that just a tiny bit. One of the key things that PCMT has done for us is we actually have, if you'll think of this as 2 queues. There's a GDSN queue that allows somebody who's using the PCMT software to subscribe to a GDSN data pool provider and receive product data directly from the manufacturer or their supplier wholesaler. And so that would come directly into the GDSN queue. If you were only working with GS1, GDSN derived products, and that's the only ones you had to manage, that would be enough for you. That would be right there and you could be done. However, that's not the reality that I think that many of us live in. So then we have the second queue, which is your, if you will, your country catalog or your product catalog that's yours managing. And you may have things that are non-GDSN there. We create a link between the GDSN queue and your product queue using the GTIN that allows that mapping. And a GTIN is like a unique identifier that gets stamped onto element, and that's our bridge that we bring in and across. There's a piece there on the mapping elements that we can expand on and show everybody later, but that's a really important point. And I think it helps to get to a third question that I saw pop up on, is it required to understand GS1 to use PCMT? No, you don't have to. I'd encourage you that as you go down your journey that you think about GS1 or your country begins to think about this, but no, it may take time, but you could pick up PCMT and be able to use this right out of the gate for your elements there. It is not a requirement that you have GS1, but when you're ready, it's there for you, and you'll be able to leverage it. Okay, back over to you, Brandon.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Josh and Stu. So, and feel free to keep the questions coming in. In fact, there's a follow-up question on that same topic, Josh and Stu, about GTINs and local country mapping codes. Regarding using GTINs to map, what if the country level code is more broad than the GTINs? Can you have like one-to-many And maybe your t-shirt, that if you saw the pictures of the t-shirts on the screen, maybe maybe this is that situation, Stu.
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick, actually, because this does get us in on that a little bit. Screen one.
So if a country level code may be very broad, like a country level code is just for a malaria, a malaria pill, but there might be 10 different GTINs for the specific manufacturer,
Yep.
SKUs for all the different sorts of malaria, malaria medicines that you might keep on the shelf from different manufacturers. So the country level code could be very broad, but there might be a lot of specific GTINs.
Yep.
It is kind of a one-to-many relationship is the question.
Yeah, this is actually probably where we run into the most complexity, both not just from the global family planning ban, but also in country context, because say DHIS2 as a health monitoring element, they're typically looking at the world not at a SKU level. They're not looking at it at a very granular level. Whereas a warehouse manager who's dealing with pallets, he's looking at it or he or she is looking at it from a very different kind of numbering element, as opposed to perhaps your planners and forecast people. One of the things that we did in the product is talked about through these variants. And so Josh was doing the demo, he showed you 32 products. And our product to us is something that is functionally equivalent underneath it. It's a high level elements. You were seeing in there, say, cycle beads, but another one might be one rod implants. That's a product. It's a one rod implant. There may be multiple manufacturers that produce that one rod implant, and each manufacturer may have slight variations. Maybe one's shelf life is 1,300 days and another one's shelf life is 1,100 days. Okay, but they're functionally equivalent. And a two rod implant is very different. Its shelf life is 1,800 days. It gets you into a different product range. So for us, we design ours at a product level, and then we have our suppliers and wholesalers and manufacturers, because they can have different price profiles, and then we have all our variations that come down into here. A GTIN can be mapped in and across, and we can do one-to-minis, where it then selects in and says, okay, I can orient this. But when our forecasters and planners are looking at the world, they tend to look at it at a product level. When a warehouse manager looks at it, they tend to look at it at an item SKU level. When a procurement and sourcing vendor looks at it, they tend to look at it from this item level. So the system is designed in a way that you can flex around that. Hopefully that's a little bit helpful. There's quite a bit of intricacy in here that you can make choices around. We think that we've got a nice flexible system that lets you grow with it, but if you want to change it, you can always do so.
And Stu, your screen didn't come through. I don't know if you did have an illustration you wanted to.
Oh, I did. It didn't share? Ah! So much for that. Okay, let me unshare and try to share again. So, oh, booey.
There we see your slides.
All right.
And there's the t-shirts.
Sorry, everybody. There. So when we talked on the products, supplier variations at the bottom. So for us, we do a product at the top. That was our 32 products that you were seeing from Josh. And then we have our supplier network, because they could have different price profiles, different lead times, different requirements on how large an order can you have, those types of variations. And then underneath that, we have all the individual SKUs that would then orient and come across. So in the screen that you're seeing here, we have a concept of a generic white t-shirt, or just a generic t-shirt. We have a manufacturer who makes only white t-shirts. We have another manufacturer that makes only orange t-shirts. And then we have a wholesaler or a redistributor that can do all three variations, but maybe they have a different price point or some other packaging element, and I want to track those differently. So this is just a visual example.
Great. And the key, the key thing that PCMT does then is can have all these identifiers in the records, can have GTINs, and can have other attributes for local identifiers. The way Josh showed how simple it was to like add attributes, which is adding a field. If I had one more local system, my DHIS2 code, or some my new ERP code, I can add attributes and begin to say, oh yeah, and this product is called this other thing in this other system, and start to connect up all these different things, including in this sort of one-to-many relationship.
Okay.
We haven't
bounced back up. There was an earlier question on which attributes and products will be provided at the global level versus individual programs. I can only commit for what Global Family Planning VAN is doing, and we will share our catalog to the public, and so you can use that as a seed for your space. Now that's only reproductive health products. I mean, that's what we do, that's our focus. So other programmatic areas such as HIV, malaria, vaccines, they have their own communities that will do elements there on the pieces. What we do know on that is that there is a strong interest in moving towards GS1 and the constructions there, and being able to have those that are publishing their catalogs through that mechanism to make that available. So you could subscribe and get all of that data there. We'll give it to you both through GDSN and through PCMT as a starting point.
Yeah, thanks. There's also a follow-up question here kind of about this picture of the t-shirts. The question is about the second variant. Is that the manufacturer specific one, or would two red t-shirts from two different manufacturers be the same second variant?
So we, in our model and the way that we've done it, there's a lot of flexibility, and you have choices that you can do in here. I'm going to describe the way that we chose to do it. So we have the concept of a product, and then we separate out by our supplier network. Again, lead times could be different, price points could be different, different labeling requirements, registration requirements could be different. So we separate here. So let's say we have manufacturer A, B, and C. So these have come across. Well, manufacturer A and B, and then a reseller, distributor. And in this case, I'm going to talk through this black t-shirt as if they were UNFPA. UNFPA to me is nothing more than a wholesaler distributor functionally. And they could be acquiring product from, say, Mylan or Cycle Technologies or Bayer. Or I could go directly to Bayer and buy from them directly. We can associate the GTIN to both places as so long as it's actually the real product. You may be getting different labeling requirements, which would carry with it different registration requirements into your country, which should force a different GTIN. So it's important to know whether or not you need to track on labeling and registrations. If you do, then you get more variation in your items here and how you need to align them. I know it's a little complex and a little arcane here, but it's a good question.
Great. Another few questions in the chat, and so keep these coming. These are great questions. The next question: what would be required from external systems used in a country to source some data from PCMT? So, for example, how could an LMIS system learn about all the identifiers of a product that are stored in PCMT, or retrieve the catalog of PCMT products to use? Could it just rely on a REST API exposed by PCMT, or is there anything more that's needed? yeah, explain how does this interoperability work? And maybe Josh, Josh, if you want to take this.
Yeah, I'll cover it real quickly. But there is kind of the right now state and then the to be state, the envision state. And so right now, yes, we do have some basic REST APIs, or actually we have full REST APIs and a full set of exports and imports. And what you would need to know aside from just the API level is how that data is structured. So kind of how we're looking at these t-shirts here. You'd want to make sure that that at the top of this level that you would have your generic products, and at the bottom you would have more of your trade items, and you'd want to know in OpenLMIS, for example, where that data is coming in. So do you want the generic t-shirt at the top, and do you want the trade items at the bottom, or do you perhaps only want the generic t-shirt data at the top? So you have to understand a little bit about the structure, and that's again where I was talking earlier about we should be publishing best practices for how you structure this data. But once you have a good structure, then it would be, through one of these exports or, through one of the REST APIs. And that kind of gets us into our to be state, our desired state or envisioned state, where we're thinking about taking a RESTful API system, conventions, that is in the health system called HL7 Fire. And right now it doesn't have a whole lot of what we would need to communicate this information, or it's very early stages. And we would like to take that, add on to it, or progress its maturity such that we can then put that those Fire representations into PCMT as well as OpenLMIS and others. And that is something that is going to be desired in a lot of different country and systems as well as global good systems. So that's kind of the high level overview. Hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, that's great. So I think the key takeaway is the API, REST APIs are already available today in version 1 of PCMT, and the work on HL7 Fire standards is something that'll be ongoing in version 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to touch in on that also, is that with this exports routine, you can, depending on the level of sophistication of the other systems that you have, that at a minimum, you can easily create yourself an export, and these export profiles is very feature rich. And that allows to be able to push data or present data in a spot where LMIS systems or in-country warehouse systems can pick that up and work with it. If you're more sophisticated, you've got that REST API, and that we're looking to extend that standard and be able to do more drop into place for OpenHIE in particular.
Excellent, thanks. Next question says, thanks a lot for the presentations. Where can we find the GTIN's codes for other health products besides family planning? Is that directly included in the PCMT? And so maybe Stu, this is a good one for you to kind of be clear that for family planning, there is this public catalog that includes the GTINs that's being published by GFP VAN for use around the globe. But for other product categories, it's not yet the same approach.
Look up. Okay, so the GTIN lookups, this is a very good site to know about, is either the jippergs1.org search by GTIN and GS1 company database. These two sites give you a very quick way to research what companies are currently registered with GDSNs and have a way of publishing mechanism, and what their individual GTINs can be. What drives a manufacturer to doing a GTIN and embedding the GTIN onto their packaging is the regulations that require it. And so it is a bit of a journey, and this is where those people that are acting in the procurement functions and the regulatory functions are beginning to shift and make this a requirement that it be placed upon the labelings. That means the manufacturers then place it on there and it's available, and now you can begin the subscription process. I don't have visibility into where the other verticals for the global market are, say HIV or vaccines. But as I think there's a lot of incentive that we're going to see this moving quickly over the next 2 years to 3 years, where this is going to become the norm for those products, and you'll have that available. But I would definitely get to know these 2 links.
Yeah, and I will say, I just put in the chat, we do have a colleague from GS1 who's on the line and offered to answer. If you have specific questions about GS1, feel free to use her email address there to ask afterwards. Of course, if you have questions about PCMT, we'll put the slide back up about the PCMT address. I guess I'll add a bit into this question. Part of your question was, are these GTIN codes directly included in the PCMT? And my answer to that would be, if you download and use PCMT or use PCMT hosted in the cloud, you can subscribe to the Global Family Planning VANS catalog, which does have the GTINs. It has that whole almost 1,200 specific GTINs that all map up into product families, into the 32 or so products that the Global FP VAN, which means UNFPA and USAID and other catalogs that are harmonized globally. And that data comes with GTINs, as well as the categories and the more sort of generic products. And so it's not that data is included in PCMT, but that if you use PCMT, you can just kind of subscribe and pull that in. But the other catalogs outside of family planning are still, there's not the same kind of global catalog you can just subscribe to. So you do have to, like Stu said, do different things to source some of the GS1 identifiers and GTINs on those. I do agree with Stu, this is going to expand quickly, and I hope that the other areas like vaccines, where UNICEF has required GTINs, and other product families, TB, malaria, HIV, that more of those catalogs might just be available for you to subscribe to and pull in, rather than you having to source a lot of that information yourself.
Yeah, there's within the tool, I think this is a good lead into this question here. Within the tool, would you be able to subscribe or look up GTINs, donor catalogs, GFP Chem catalogs, etc.? Short answer is yes. In PCMT's installation for us, GFP VAN, we have a data pool, what's called a data pool provider. And that's how our on-ramp to GDSN. How do we get this data from the things? And we can subscribe to anybody in the world that is publishing data on GDSN. And we can initiate that subscription request, and then that data comes back to us, and we load it up into PCMT. So that mechanism would be available there. But there's additional work that has to happen to go to other data pools to make that easy button be able to work there on that piece, because it's optimized for our data pool provider. So there's some more development that has to happen on that, and would be being taken on in version 2.
Yep.
So
okay, great.
I saw Joe's question here, and since I'm on the screen, I thought I'd show him real quick.
Yeah, we probably have time for just 1 or 2 last questions, and then we'll wrap up at the top of the hour. So yeah, if you want, well, I can read Joe's question. Hi, this is Joseph from Malawi. Does the system have a limit to how many products it can take? I appreciate your demo has about 1,200, but Malawi has a growing catalog of over 6,000. Wondering if the system has been tested with such a number, and how is the performance in low bandwidth environments where there may not be great internet, like 3G or 2G as you move to remote areas. Is that something, Stu, you want to speak to quickly?
Sure. I haven't tested it yet. Hi, Joe. I've not tested it yet with 6,000 on the pieces. The performance for us has been quite good overall, but I'd be interested in doing a larger test, taking it up to 6, 10, 12,000 and seeing where the performance drops off. I just haven't done that test yet because I've topped out at 1,200. it'd be a good one to do. From the bandwidth condition, you could certainly, you have a couple of hosting choices and options here on that, and you could host in country, or you could host on Amazon, or you could have Village Reach host for you. So you have some options on optimizing around that, and I would defer that over to Josh to talk through what he's noticed on that in his experience.
Yeah, and I would offer, you know, if we haven't tested it yet with 6,000 or 10,000, I would gladly offer that's something we want to do during version 2. So let's be in touch after this event, Joseph, and we could even like download a snapshot of the Malawi catalog with 6,000 or more and load it in to do that test. I think that's something we'd want to do right away, and be glad to just be in touch and test that out.
Okay. Before we close up, I did want to respond to Joe Shob's question up above. Can a product have different attributes? Medical has different requirements than pharma versus RH? Yes, yes. Each product family can have its own set of attributes that vary and are different from one another, and they can be reused from one another. So yes, that's one of the great feature points of this, is it doesn't have to be one size fits all.
Great. And there was one other question that came in privately. I think this will be our last one. Here's the question. Product catalog is often used interchangeably with product database. Can you make a distinction or highlight the differences?
We had lots of debate about the naming. I laugh because we had lots of debate about what is the naming of this and on the pieces. We settled on product catalog as being its own best description of being a collective resource pulling together the elements that were available to be used by others. That's as best as I can offer. Josh, Brandon, do you have more you want to add?
No, I mean, I'd say, yeah, there's lots of names for these things. We know in countries there's already lots of catalogs out there, but this is an approach that really tries to make them interconnect and let you map all those identifiers together. And yeah, it is all about how there's different names for different things, just like there are for different medicines. And what's important is to really start to connect all those identifiers and make systems interoperable. So Josh, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I don't think anything from me.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining today's webinar. Feel free to use the email address here on the screen to ask more questions or contact us about collaboration. The URLs are here on the screen as well for the wiki with documentation or the developer link to get straight to the code. And we really appreciate everyone's time and interest in helping streamline, product catalog interoperability. So thanks for joining us today, and we will share this recording publicly online.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.